And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host Laraib. As we are here to break down week 15 of the NFL season, Laraib. 3 weeks left of football. As you know, as much as we're in it right now, we're excited. We're looking at playoff matchups. We're going through all these different scenarios and who's going to be in, who's going to be out, and all the seeding implications. It's important to take a step back and say, wow, we're 15 weeks into this NFL season, and then pretty soon it'll be whittled down to just 16 or to 14 teams. Then, just keep on chopping down until we're there in New Orleans for the Super Bowl or of. So, really excited to break down this full week. Every team off a bias. We had a full 16 game slate. We're going to be having those the rest of the year. Just first off, Rob, overall status of the NFL season, how are we feeling right now?
It has been fantastic. We had a couple stinkers here and there. Maybe not the greatest Thursday night football game this past week, but an awesome slate of games on Sunday that delivered some very interesting results. We got to learn a lot about some teams who had some question marks, a la Eagles passing attack, who really got to silence the doubters. And then the picks, of course, that we had were
Mm.
ultimately a tie. And I mean, we were at the Saints game and I was just thinking, you basically, boxed me up this week. It would have been a huge win, but you said it yourself. You just couldn't get out of your own damn way by picking those dumbass Dolphins. And I don't know what made you pick those Seahawks on, Sunday Night Football. And that was the reason we tied this week. So I'm still up to with 3 weeks left to go. And I still feel like it's gonna be really close down the stretch.
Yeah, and if I had to sacrifice this week as a win for my fantasy team to pull through, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. But in terms of the games that were big games that really mattered, I got those right. So in my opinion, this week was I'll call it a moral victory for
A
me.
missed
A
opportunity if you
moral
lose.
victory because I got the Rams Niners game. That was basically a playoff game as we demonstrated. And then Buffalo and Detroit. I mean, I feel good about those two games. I gave you a few cookies here and there, but I'll find a way to come back these last 3 weeks because now I'm done playing around. If you have a awful record, oh man, good luck. Good luck, Larab. Good luck to myself as well. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to our topic of the day. Oldie but a goodie. We have cap or no cap, Larab. Um, just for those who are not informed, cap means line. Come on now. No cap means, hey, there's some truth to that. And only hot takes here on the First and Goal podcast, Larab. So I'm going to go ahead and posit you this cap or no cap, Larab. The Detroit Lions suffer a 8-point loss to the Buffalo Bills at home last week. In a vacuum, that doesn't sound too bad. Bills are one of the best teams in the league. But when you look at it and say, oh, the Bills actually scored 45 points on you, I believe that was the case. Let me pull up the actual score. And pretty much, or 48, excuse me, 48 to 42, and basically dominating that entire game. It wasn't until a late score at the end made it look more respectable than it was. But giving up 48 points at home after giving up 30 plus last week to the Packers. And it's because of one thing, Larab. It's the injuries. I mean, over and over and over again this season, it's been not just, secondary guys, just backups, depth pieces. It's been the best players on the defense. Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, Malcolm Rodriguez, Alex Anzalone, Carlton Davis. It's huge contributors, leading interception guys, leading tacklers, all these massive players just falling down. And now you're looking at the Lions defense, and it's not a matter of coaching. It's not a matter of want to. It's not a matter of anything except for just personnel at this point. And then huge news. It was just defense, but now offensively, you lose David Montgomery, the Knuckles to the Knuckles and Sonic duo. Larab, cap or no cap, the Detroit Lions, because of injuries, are going to lose in the playoffs before the NFC Championship round.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna take that cap. I'm gonna go ahead and place it on my head here, Lewis. I understand, losing all those guys is going to be huge for this team, but their engine of this team is their offense, and that starts up front with their offensive line and Jared Goff. Now, of course, a rushing game is going to take a huge hit, but they have shown they can dominate teams. And when you look at this class of NFC teams, you look at the Eagles, who, are right there up there with them. And then, you look at a Vikings team who they already beat this season. I just feel like there's not as much as not gonna be as tough for them to get to the NFC Championship game. If they were in the AFC, then this is a different question. But you look at the field of competition here and the way they've been playing football, it's their offense who's been dominating. They put up 42 points in this game. I know they still lose, but to be able to put those performances on all season long, this is not their first 40-point game. They've had a 50-point game this year. As long as they have Jared Goff, as long as they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and as long as they have Jahmyr Gibbs, you feel like they're going to be able to stay in these games. They're going to stay aggressive. Now, that aggressiveness a little bit came to haunt them with that onside kick with 10 minutes left to go in the game. That's always going to be a huge factor with this team. But to say, they're most likely going to have home field advantage throughout the entire playoffs. And teams going over there, I think it's gonna be tough for them. I still feel like they are the top of that class along there with the Eagles, and to say that they can lose before and any team can do that. But I just think they are in they're playing outstanding football, and they have a really good shot at making the NFC Championship.
Laraib, it's getting really tough for me to buy into this Lions team. You brought up some good points, and I still think the strength of this team is still the strength. That's their offensive line, and that will win them games. But to win game after game with awful defense, defense wins championships, Laraib. That is the steadying factor for all these teams come playoff time. And I'm looking at some of the teams, and it's also rather presumptuous of you to assume they're going to secure the 1 seed. They have a tied record with the Eagles and the Vikings right now and still play games against the Niners, who, albeit, they definitely will be favored, but a Niners team that still has talent and still has a lot to play for. Just, they still have a shot in the division, I guess. But then most importantly, last game of the season against the Vikings, that game very may as well be for the division crown. And if the Vikings win that game and the Lions fall to the wild card round, have to go on the road to either Tampa, a team who's already beaten them this season, or you go on the road to the Rams in Los Angeles, in which that game went into overtime week 1. I know that was forever ago, but definitely a team, they played in the playoffs last year, and it's always close between these two teams. I just don't have the confidence that week in and week out, especially if they don't get a first round bye, that they will make it to the NFC Championship game. But even then, Laraib, there's a reason why I said NFC Championship game, because I don't think this Lions team, constructed as it is with the injuries, is a Super Bowl caliber team. Ultimately, defenses win championships, and the rate that their defense is just getting decimated, guys being out, so bad, really impactful guys. I just don't think they're going to be able to pull it together. But, Laraib, what I want to go forward to, and I want to mention this because you brought it up, this Lions team wasn't a perfect team going into this either, even with a lot of their defensive players healthy. When they beat the Jaguars 52-6, all was hunky-dory. But you still have the wild card element of a Dan Campbell coaching decision that did burn them last year. I know we all love Dan Campbell. I know he's a really, fun guy, and we all are rooting for him because he's just a grounded. He loves football. He's passionate. He gives awesome speeches. But we need to call a spade here. He has a lot of very questionable decisions. The decision to go for an onside kick down 2 scores with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter against the Bills, when there's no surprise onsides anymore. You have to tell the team that you're choosing to kick an onsides kick. And then they immediately Bills touchdown. And all of a sudden you have to climb back into it. And there's some, pissy defenses for that. I'm not going to buy into it. All that told me is Dan Campbell either one, just wanted to stay super aggressive and have this underdog, nobody believes in us mentality and go for it. Or more likely, he does not believe in this defense either. Because if he had any belief in his defense, he would do the smart thing of, let's try to get a 3-and-out. Let's try to get a punt. Let's get the ball back, and boom, we're right back in this game. Instead, he basically gifted the Bills another touchdown, and then all of a sudden you're in the same exact spot. You need an onside kick. So, these things scare me come playoff time. And on top of the defensive injuries, it's getting dark quickly for this Lions team, Laraib.
I think that offensive engine I can trust more than anyone else in the NFC. Maybe the Eagles with their rushing attack and what we saw from this past weekend. But if you're telling me it's going to be Jared Goff, Ben Johnson, and ARSB versus, Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, I'm leaning towards the Lions. If you're telling me it's, pumpkin o'clock for Sam Darnold and Justin
You
Jefferson
can't even say
and
it.
Aaron
You
Jones,
can't even
I'm
say it.
going with the Lions. I still, winning a Super Bowl, yes. Winning the NFC Championship, yes. Those those games come down to how well your defense plays. When you're talking about round one, round two, how well can you put together just a cohesive game plan? I've seen that from Dan Campbell. I've seen that from Aaron Glenn, who has been outstanding. Even with all the injuries they've had so far, I trust in this team to put together a good plan because this is not a team who had it easy last year, right? In the playoffs, they had to battle when the Buccaneers came into town. They had to battle when they went to San Francisco, and that one doesn't go their way. But still, is a team who's tried and tested, and I think I can still lean on them to make their way to the NFC Championship, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to another big cap or no cap. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have been battling it out for the MVP this season. And it really looks like Josh Allen, after that huge performance in the last 2 weeks, I think over 1,000 yards of offense put together by him and the Bills have kind of secured the MVP, Lewis. But I want to ask you, is Lamar not getting enough credit for what he's doing for this Bills team or this Ravens team so far this season?
I don't think he's getting enough credit, but I think he's properly number 2 in the race. And what I mean by that is if you simply look at their numbers side by side, well, Lamar has more touchdowns, or I think he has like one more touchdown. He has fewer interceptions, and even those interceptions, he's thrown 3 all year long. Those are pretty, iffy drops by receivers, batted balls in the air, things that he did not intentionally put the ball in harm's way. And number one thing, they played each other this season, and he steamrolled Josh Allen, the Bills, and that was definitely Josh Allen's worst game of the year against the Ravens that game. So why do I still put Josh Allen ahead of Lamar, even saying that? It's a little bit of what have you done for me lately, and a little bit of who's played better in the bigger games, and that's been Josh Allen. In the past or 5 weeks, excuse me, Josh Allen, beat the Chiefs, their only loss of the season, and he played awesome in that game. That huge 4th and 2 conversion, that it's the moment right there where he ran in for the touchdown was insane. And then last week, just going nuclear against the Lions after another insane performance and a loss against the Rams. He's been a one-man show this entire season long. You lose Stephon Diggs, you beef up the offensive line, you give him a little bit of running game, you give him some help with Joe Brady, and he's just put it all on his back and orchestrated a perfect offense, top scoring offense in the entire NFL, and not a lot of household names on this offense. There's been a lot of guys who's missed games. Keon Coleman's missed a lot of games. Dalton Kincaid's missed a lot of games this season. And he's been the steadying force. He is definitely the most valuable player. And, Lamar, he doesn't have the greatest weapons, but Zay Flowers and more importantly, Derrick Henry being a part of your offense, you're not as valuable. You don't contribute as much as what Josh Allen has to do for his team game in and game out. Ultimately, I think these two are super close, and I don't think Lamar gets the respect, especially by the sports books. I mean, Josh Allen already being a minus 900 favorite is a little ridiculous in my opinion, especially with 3 games left, and the Ravens having huge games still against the Steelers and the Texans, whereas Josh Allen has 2 games against the Patriots and then a game against the Jets, where Lamar could make a huge push against really good teams in that MVP case, but ultimately, as it stands now, I still have Josh Allen, but by a narrow margin.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. Lamar, I'll agree. Lamar is not getting enough credit, but I think the clear favorite right now has to be Josh Allen. And it was what you said, right? It was all those big moments. That 4th and 2 where he runs in it for the touchdown and the Chiefs' undefeated streak is over. That Sunday, really all his big case really started against the 49ers in that huge snowy game. The ball's getting tossed back to him and he's diving into the end zone for a touchdown.
Mhm.
It's just been those big moments like that. And, it also, their record has been fantastic. Lamar has put up some bad numbers and a couple of questionable losses. That Raiders game early in the season, that Browns loss. And so it's just been those moments. Now, obviously, the numbers are for Lamar Jackson, but you think back to last year, the numbers were in Josh Allen's favor, and Lamar won't end up winning that MVP. Sometimes it's just about the moments that you had in those big time games, and that's just been Josh Allen this year. I don't think you can say this guy's 100 times better than the other guy. That's just kind of the optics of it and the way it is. And so Josh Allen, and especially with this 3 games left, where you really feel like they can steamroll some more teams, a couple big more highlight plays from Josh Allen. I think that will really wrap it up for him and secure him his first ever MVP.
Yeah, and then I want to get ahead of something. I don't think wins are a quarterback stat because it's about what you do in those wins. It's about how you impact winning. That's why last year, when a guy like Brock Purdy was up for MVP, everyone was freaking out because it's like he doesn't deserve it. He doesn't impact winning as much as these other guys. He doesn't have to do as much. There's not as much on his plate as these other guys, Lamar, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. And then you see it between these two guys, Lamar and Patrick. I mean, and Lamar and Josh, who are winning games, but it's about how they're doing it because of them. They
Mm-hmm.
are the most
Mm-hmm.
valuable. If you replace a Saquon Barkley, a Brock Purdy with the backup, would that swing the prediction of a game as much as these guys? No, it would not. So I think it's important that you look at these type of conversations with a little bit of nuance because you get lost the bigger meaning of when you just look at the stats or you just look at the wins. You really need to watch football. Watch football. That's my big takeaway here. And that's what I think will be the best way for you to make a educated opinion. But let's go ahead, Laraib, for our next cap or no cap. Patrick Mahomes, a guy he's saying, hey, Lewis, I have the most wins in the NFL. Where am I at? Well, you're not putting him nearly enough stats. But Mahomes, with the best record in the NFL, had a high ankle sprain in his last game against the Browns. And me and high ankle sprain, one of those
The
underrated
kiss of death.
deadly injuries. But even though Mahomes did have this similar high ankle sprain back in 2022 when they beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. So this is something he's dealt with and he's come back from. But Laraib, with a 13-1 record and basically a 2-game lead on the Buffalo Bills, do you think the Chiefs should sit Mahomes for the rest of this regular season?
Yes, they should. And they're going to bring in your guy, Carson Wentz. This is, a
Mm.
two-headed thing for me. I want to see your man, Carson Wentz, go in there and make a fool of himself in front of the whole world. And secondly, the big thing you said was 2-game lead over the Bills. One win. Can you get me one win against the Texans who, are up and down, especially when they're on the road having to go to Kansas City? Then, Steelers, that's going to be a battle. And then your final game of the year, the Broncos. If the Broncos, who picked up a huge win this last week, are not really playing for much in that final game, and the Chiefs are, oh yeah, we need one win right here, secure the 1 seed. That really feel like that could be one that they can get easily. And so, yes, I think you bench Patrick Mahomes, you let that ankle heal for 3 weeks, plus the bye, 4 weeks, have him, be as great as he can be when the playoffs come. Now we know Mahomes has a little theatricals or theatrics in him for these injuries. The Eagles Super Bowl where he's, oh my God, my ankle
He's
is
so tough.
done. He's just toughing it out. And then boom, he's Mahomes. And so I think if this really is a big thing, I think they sit him. But as we saw this line flipped earlier, just moments ago, I think he might be okay.
Yeah, honestly, to add on to your point, because I agree with you, I think they should sit him for the rest of the season. I don't even think they need the 1 seed because even if they lose out and the Bills overtake them for the 1 and they get the 2, Obviously, you want the bye. You want the 1 seed. That is the prize. But the Chiefs showed us last year that they can go on the road and every single game still win the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying that this is necessarily the most important thing of this entire team is Patrick Mahomes. He is the engine that makes it all go. I know he isn't having his normal Patrick Mahomes season, but what he means for this team situationally, always being amazing. He obviously I don't need to convince you guys that Patrick Mahomes is valuable and that he's amazing, but I don't necessarily think that they need to trot him out there, especially this week against the Texans. And we'll get into that game in our Thursday preview. But we'll get into that game on our Thursday preview. But Texans second in the league in sacks this year. A lot of potential quarterback hits. I saw a stat since week 7. Mahomes leading the league in quarterback hits by a wide margin. Funnily enough, Drew Lock is third on that list, and he's only played in 5 of those games. So, yikes. Anywho, but that's startling because he's taking these hits late in the year against these really, aggressive defenses, bad offensive line that just, DJ Humphrey's going to be out again with an ankle injury. So Wanye Morris is back there. Might as well be Stone Forsythe trying to protect him. It's just brutal. He's getting hit over and over again. And why risk it? Why the prize is the prize. You keep your most valuable commodity in tip-top shape. And hey, maybe you win some of these games, 2 or 3, or maybe just one of these games. You still clinch the 1 seed, and then boom, you're all set. Am I forgetting something?
The
Oh,
Bills really easy
and
schedule.
and they have the best backup quarterback
Oh
in the
my
entire
goodness.
NFL in Carson Wentz. And this shows how deep this Chiefs team and how smart their front office is. Because they see, oh, wait, is that a former MVP candidate just sitting there for us as a backup? Are you? And apparently in training camp, some people were like, didn't know that Carson Wentz wasn't the starter. They thought maybe Mahomes was the backup. I don't know who those people were, but anyway, I think Carson Wentz can not only win one of these games, I think he will win all 3. If he starts in any of these games, except for maybe the Broncos games, because they probably have a bunch of people sitting in that case. But if it's only him that they're changing out, ooh-wee, he's set up for success. Andy Reid, Carson Wentz, are you kidding me? He's going to scheme him up using his legs, getting on the run. Don't forget how good Carson Wentz is. This Carson Wentz erasure over the past few years is pretty mind-boggling. He almost had the Colts in the playoffs until I forgot what happened at the end of the year.
They
But
went to Jacksonville and lost for the 12th time in a row.
yeah.
No, I really think when Carson Wentz goes into the game, for any one of these games, the whole world is going to see how good Patrick Mahomes is at playing quarterback in the National Football League, just by the way Carson Wentz is having to throw to all these bums out there, 100-year-old Travis Kelce, 1,000-year-old DeAndre Hopkins,
1,000?
and whoever else they throw out there
Xavier
behind that
Worthy?
sorry offensive line. We're just going to appreciate Patrick Mahomes that much more.
Okay. Anyway, what's your last cap or no cap? All
The
right.
last cap or no cap. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were counted out to start the season, halfway through the season, now towards the end, are leading the NFC South and look like they are well on their way to hosting another playoff game this year. But there's a team who's battled a couple of injuries, maybe, a really old defense, Chris Godwin out for the year. But when they're hosting a playoff game, do you think the Buccaneers will be able to win a playoff game this year?
Now, obviously, TBD on the matchup right now. Because it looks like they're pretty a shoe. If they win the division, which they have a 1-game lead over Atlanta. Atlanta winning both of the games against Tampa this season. So if the Bucks stumble, they could really put themselves in a precarious spot. So, but as it stands now, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who just dominated your Los Angeles Chargers 40-17. And Laraib, this offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, has totally just evolved this offense. And to the beginning of the year, it was heavy Evans, Godwin, the classic, Buccaneers offense from the past. But now, he's found Bucky Irving, who's just been this revelation as a rookie running back, who's just been outstanding on the ground, over 100 rushing yards in a game where a lot of people didn't even think he was going to play that much. He just balled out for the Buccaneers. And leaning on Mayfield and play action game, using a lot more of the tight end Kate Otten. And now that Mike Evans is back, he just torched the Chargers defense, which going into that game was the best scoring defense in the NFL. So this is no small feat for the Bucs to go on the road and drop 40 on the Chargers. And now sitting here, dangerous Mayfield balling out this season. He'll still have his Mayfield moments, which makes me skeptical to sit here confidently and say they will win a playoff game. But they have the talent. I really do like Liam Cohen as offensive coordinator. And Todd Bowles, he just gets a lot out of his defensive players. I don't love him a ton as an NFL coach. I don't think situationally he's definitely not the best. But in terms of a defensive coach, he gets a lot out of a little. And they still do have talent, aging talent, Levante David, Vita Vea. But they could still have the guys to make big plays in a playoff game. So I think the Bucs winning a playoff game is not out of the question, but I can't quite commit to it without saying the matchup.
Yeah, and I have to agree. Unless the Bucks in some massive way, I don't think it's possible for them to move up at all. Because you think they're at the 3 and they're going to be facing basically Green Bay at this point, and I just
They're at
think
the 3?
the Bucks are currently at the 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because they have the tiebreaker over the LA Rams
Rams.
based on best win percentage in conference games. So actually, this is, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. Would you want to play Minnesota or Green Bay? But that's the thing, right? This NFC North, Lewis, they will beat up on each other. But whenever they're playing somebody else, it just really
Wild.
looks like a different class of teams. And I guess that's unfortunate for them just because, if you're in another division, just wiping everybody. But now you're just, beating up on each
You're
other.
third in your own division.
Right, exactly. And we saw it from Green Bay this past Sunday night where, the Seahawks, they're playing a little bit better, the defense is getting right, and no,
Wow.
no. They just work them. And so I really like Baker Mayfield. I was huge on him last year. And this is a team, who's playing above their expectations, but when you're facing Minnesota or Green Bay, I just trust those teams a lot more than I do. And so, do they have a shot? Of course, any given Sunday. But when you're facing Green Bay, Minnesota, I don't think they have a good shot.
All right, Laraib. Well, that's going to do it for cap or no cap. Now I want to get into a fun game with you. I was thinking about this watching Caleb Williams last night and of how, if we could do a total 2024 NFL redraft, how it would go, knowing what we know now, getting more information. So starting from the top, Rob, we're going to do this. We're going to each go from 1 to 10, saying if we could do a do-over, who would we pick in those slots? So, Rob, you are the Chicago Bears, and you are on the clock. Are you calling Mr. Caleb Williams?
No, I'm calling Mr. Jaden Daniels. Now, you could tell me any team or any player who went to this Chicago Bears organization would be playing as bad as Caleb Williams is. And I wouldn't disagree with you. But I just think what I've seen, the eye test, Caleb Williams has definitely shown his flashes. And I would say he's the second best quarterback in this draft. But Jaden Daniels, the way he's protected the ball as a rookie, the way he's won these huge shootout games, and also on the other side of that ball, just defensive battles where he's had to keep the ball safe. I just think he's been playing outstanding in his ball placement, in his accuracy, in his completion percentage. He's just playing better than Caleb Williams. That's clear as day to me. And I think even if you put them on each other's teams, it would stay like that. And so I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels as my number 1 overall pick.
And Laura, my number 1 overall pick is staying the same. I'm still taking Caleb, and I agree with you a lot. And if this was a 2024 redraft for just this season, I would pick Jaden Daniels as well. But I think what Caleb can give me in this division, the NFC North, where you just need pure special and you need pure availability, I mean, Laura, let's call it a buck. We were at the Commanders game this past weekend. Jaden Daniels, ever since he had that rib injury against Carolina a few weeks ago, he's been a different player. He's so much more less likely to run, and that's what made him such an exciting player. And without the rushing ability, now you could. I mean, Commanders don't have the greatest weapons, and I still think Jaden Caleb is neck and neck. But I think what Caleb can give you, given the protection, given that we've seen high level special from him, and I just think over the course of a career, I trust Caleb's build, his body more than I do trust Jaden's. And Caleb is also younger. And I think, they've been kind of what and what so far this season. Jaden, obviously better this season, but I would still go with Caleb. I don't think we've seen enough of a sample size for me to stray away from that. So that's our 1-2, because I agree. I have Jaden Daniels right there, staying the same number 2. Patriots still taking Drake May. We both agree.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That's just a franchise who needs to start new with a quarterback. And so, yeah, Drake May.
All right, Rival, I will go ahead and hop on the clock for this one. The Arizona Cardinals originally picked Marvin Harrison Jr. with their first draft selection. I'm changing that up this time around, Laraib. And I do love me some Trey McBride. But when you have a player this special, as in Brock Bowers, you take him no matter what. And I think Brock Bowers is that special. And what you could be able to do in the run game with Brock, working off of Brock and Trey, at some point, his talent is way too high. Brock Bowers clearly is the best football player in this draft class, despite the quarterbacks. And I think you have to take him here at number 4.
I can't disagree with you there, but with my number 4 pick, I say the Cardinals still take a wide receiver, but they take a different wide receiver in Leak Neighbors, who has just been dominant. Someone who's been able to be hyper targeted in his time in New York. And I think he could really change things up for the Cardinals. Now, Marv, I got him at 5, but in this scenario, I just think that Malik Neighbors has been, jumping off the screen for me in his contested catch ability, his body control, and the way he's been playing this season. He's been outstanding. I think he's going to be the best wide receiver to come out of this class, and I think he would be taken by the Cardinals in a redraft.
Rob, I'm gonna go ahead and tell. Actually, no. I'll leave suspense. I'll leave suspense. But interesting selection there. Let's go to number 5 now, where the Chargers selected Joe Alt. I'm keeping that pick, Larob. What about you?
I'm switching it over.
Why? That makes no sense.
I'm going with Brock Bowers here.
Okay.
Like you mentioned, probably the best football player to come out. Justin Herbert. Let me walk you back a couple years ago when the Bengals had a draft picked and they got to choose between either Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell. Those were the 2 options. And the entire meme was Joe Burrow standing in the pocket, and Penei Sewell was blocking for him. And the other side of that coin was Joe Burrow not standing in the pocket, but Jamar Chase was open 50 yards down the field. And I'm going to go ahead and say that the Bengals made the right pick in drafting Jamar Chase. Him and T. Higgins have been that electric. And I think Justin Herbert could have that same type of, presence in the NFL if he had a guy to throw the football to besides Josh freaking Palmer. And who else they got over there? Lad McConkey, who's a good number 2 guy, Hayden Hurst and Will Dissly. Those are your other options at tight end. I think having someone like Brock Bowers, who's able to really stretch the field and not also do that, but also be an intermediate game, also run blocking as well. I think Brock Bowers would have been a great pick here for the Chargers.
I don't hate what you're thinking there as much as I violently disagreed to it when I first heard you say that. But I mean, we're talking about Jim Harbaugh, Rob, and you're talking about establishing a culture. And he says O-line is the tip of the spear. He builds around the trenches. And I think there was genuine interest and love for a guy like Brock Bowers, who still helps you out a lot in the run game. He's extremely versatile. But I mean,
But see, that's been the thing for the Chargers this season. Justin Herbert still taking the same amount of hits, still banged up as he was last year, dealing with that ankle injury. In my mind, that
Joe
offense would
Alt's been
be
very good.
he has been him and Rashawn Slater have been fantastic. But Justin Herbert still he's had outstanding games, but he's still been, getting, put on his backside, taking huge hits to his ribs and to his ankles. I just think this would be a different team if they had a number one option to throw to on offense.
But I would argue that the more valuable position is the star offensive tackle. Because now you've shored that up. And you're not building for this year. You're building for your future of your franchise. And even looking at next year's draft, a lot of people are saying it's not very good for tackles. There's some guys, but they're nowhere near as talented as Joe. Joe Alt was described as a kind of a generational tackle prospect. But not to belabor on it too long. I don't hate the Brock Bowers pick. But I mean, this is Jim Harbaugh trying to build a culture, building a team, and I think Joe Alt was the right pick. Moving on to number 6, Laraib. Remind me again who was selecting here.
The Giants, and they selected Malik Neighbors.
Okay, and obviously you already had Malik go. So who do you have here instead?
Now this is where Joe Alt goes. You look at the Giants team, what
Okay,
they
I
know
like that.
now, where Daniel Jones, you were out of there, brother. This is a team that really needed to shore up offensive line. And they obviously could have also taken Malik here, but I just think Joe Alt, you're talking about building that culture starting from scratch where, you don't have the quarterback. You might as well get, a piece on the offensive line that you can really shore up and help the next guy you draft next year.
Yeah, I obviously if Alt was here, he would have been my pick as well. But I am going with because I don't love the quarterbacks. 'Cause I don't think, guys like Bo Nix, we haven't seen enough from Michael Penix so far to warrant him being the selection here. So I think, and then offensive line, there's not that stud that I see that I would take here. So I'm going to go best player on the board, Larob. And I really do think that's Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, I think
Ooh.
he's been awesome this year playing corner. The Giants secondary has really been a problem after they really shored up their defensive line. And I think if you can get these just studs defensively, then building around the offense in years to come will be a lot easier knowing that you have one side of the ball locked up. And Quinyon's been amazing. I mean, he's probably the biggest reason this Eagles team is now in the position that it is because he's transformed the secondary. Last year, it was a complete sieve and him and maybe a guy I'll get to later have completely transformed this Eagles' fortunes this season. Quinyon Mitchell, I think, is a great pick here at number 6.
At 7, the Tennessee Titans selected J.C. Latham originally, but I'm going to go ahead and say they draft Jared Verse here,
We agree.
defensive lineman here from somewhere in college.
Florida State.
He just has been a huge impact player for the Rams, has really turned around their season. And again, this is a team with, I don't disagree with their pick originally drafting JC Latham, where you shore up that offensive line when you really have questions at quarterback. But I think the best player here available is Jared Verse. Just his versatility to come in on the defensive side, pressure the pass rusher at an elite level. I think he would be great for the Titans in a redraft.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. That's exactly who I had picked there. Titans really struggling to get to the passer this year. And at this point, you just need players. And Jared Verse is probably the pick for defensive rookie of the year right now, even though I think him and Quinyon Mitchell is going to be very close. But I love that pick. Number 8, obviously, the Falcons originally selected Michael Penix Jr., who has not played more than, I think, 5 snaps all season long because he's a backup to Kirk Cousins. Knowing what we know now, and I have this guy, he's been sitting on my board. You mentioned him earlier. I have Malik Neighbors going to the Falcons at 8 if we did a redraft. I mean, his just do it all ability as a receiver, his speed, and there's other guys who've had better seasons statistically. I think Malik's already a top 10 receiving talent in the entire NFL. And I think if he was in a little bit better of a position, I think if he was on the Titans instead of the Giants, he'd be a no doubt like almost offensive rookie of the year candidate because he's on the Giants and it's been awful for him all season long. He hasn't been able to show off his true repertoire. But I love him here. And I did want to give a shout out to a guy that I'll mention towards the end that I also considered here. But Malik Neighbors, obviously, for me.
And I am gonna go with Quinyon Mitchell, who you mentioned earlier. This Falcons secondary has been extremely porous, minus AJ Terrell. Even with the guys they brought in, Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons in that secondary position, D. Alford has been a turnstile for this Falcons secondary. And I think having a guy like Quinyon Mitchell opposite of AJ Terrell would have done wonders for them this season. So I'm gonna go with him for the Falcons.
All right, and then the Chicago Bears picked 9. They picked Rome Odunze, wide receiver. Not been that impactful this year. Still a lot of jury out on what how good he is. He's had moments, but clearly in a redraft they would pivot. I think they would go offensive line here no matter what. And the second best tackle for me is Talise Fuaga, left tackle for the Saints. I think he started every single game for the Saints this year, and through it all, he's been extremely consistent. Saints still have had a very good rushing attack all year long, and there's been so many guys in and out of the offensive lineup, and it's never been him who's been the problem. He's developed game after game, just a stalwart on that left side, dependable, and that's exactly what the Bears and Caleb Williams need right now.
That's a good pick. Yeah, I also said offensive line for the Bears, but I just said J.C. Latham, second guy who actually came off the board here. Alabama guy, he's big and strong. Go ahead
Yeah,
and
how's he
throw
been
him in.
playing in the NFL?
Hey, throw him in there. Let's see what he can do for this Bears team.
Let's just say the second best offensive tackle for Laraib.
Yeah.
All right, and then finally at number 10, we had the Vikings selecting JJ McCarthy. They traded up, but in this for the case of this scenario, we'll continue having the Vikings at number 10. And when it comes down to this season, I think what do the Vikings need? What do they need right now? And it's hard because they have a lot of good positions filled. They have a lot of solid guys, and this might sound crazy, but at number 10, out
JJ
of
McCarthy.
Oregon, I have Bucky Irving as the
Ooh.
Viking selection. Aaron Jones has been solid this year, don't get me wrong, but Bucky Irving is a difference maker. And for this Vikings team, he would be electric. Just another amazing element, rushing game, passing game, just being able to just boom off long runs. I think he's been an absolute weapon this year. A guy I really also did consider for this was Cooper DeJean. It was really in between those two guys, and I kind of flipped at the last second. I think DeJean's having an awesome year with Philadelphia, but Bucky Irving, I just got to give him the love.
And that's a great pick, but I did go with Cooper DeJean here
Okay.
at that cornerback position for the Vikings. Just someone who can really shore up that nickel spot as he's done all season long for the Eagles. There's no such thing as too much depth in the NFL. And so to have a rookie come in, play starter for you at the nickel position with the way Brian Flores has coached that defense, I think he would be, a great fit here for the Vikings.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our 2024 NFL redraft. That was a lot of fun. Real quick, I was trying to find any way I could get Brian Thomas Jr. into this top 10 because how amazing he's been playing this season, but it couldn't quite match up for me. But if there's anyone just right on the outside, I would put Brian Thomas Jr.'s name into that hat. But Rob, let's go ahead and move on to Thursday Night Football. Coming up, we have the Chargers hosting the Denver Broncos. Chargers favored by 3 in this game after getting annihilated against the Buccaneers last week. Will they rebound against this hot Broncos team?
This is a really, really tough game to predict, especially with so many guys banged up for the Chargers. Justin Herbert dealing with an ankle, Denzel Perryman, questionable. Also, Cam Hart, cornerback, questionable. Uh, but I mean, I'm sticking to my guns. I'm sticking with my Chargers here. They really, really let me down. And they've been really struggling when they haven't been able to run the ball the past 2 games. The Gus Bus, golly,
Oh,
man,
man.
golly. But the Broncos, no, not the greatest start for them in that first half against the Colts. And maybe if Jonathan Taylor doesn't fumble that ball, we're looking at a different, just a different feel of the game at that point if they score 20 points instead of being at 13. I think this is going to be a huge game for the Chargers at home against a team who, a divisional game, Sean Payton versus Harbaugh. I just think I'm going to trust Justin Herbert to get that ankle right. I think if Gus Edwards can just give me a little juice in this one, just enough to get this offensive game going a little bit better, I'm going with the Chargers.
The Gus bus is missing a tailpipe. It's missing a radiator. It's missing the roof. I mean,
He's got
golly.
one in him. He's got one in him.
Hey, I'm going with the Broncos in this game, Laraib. I mean, this defense has been playing awesome football all season long. The biggest question for me, though, Pat Surtain is questionable. He had an injury late in the game against the Colts, so whether or not his status is still up in the air. But, I mean, this Chargers defense, a little overrated. They've been getting blasted the past few weeks. 40 by the Chargers, almost 40 by the Bengals, 30 by the Ravens. And I'm not saying this Broncos offense is gangbusters or anything, but we need to kind of rescale how we view this Chargers defense after the past few performances against playoff teams. And that is what the Broncos are now. This game, a lot of playoff implications. And there's just way too much unknown for this Chargers team. How are they going to rebound after a disappointing loss like that on a short week, staying at home? Probably majority Broncos fans. That's the obligatory Los Angeles home thing that we always have to say. And Broncos fans, I know they travel well. I think Sean Payton has a few tricks up his sleeve in this game. And as long as the offense can stay turnover free, and that's what killed them in the first half against the Colts, I think they go in and they just out-talent this Chargers team. Give me the Broncos 18 to Chargers 14.
And I think the Chargers win 17-14 late. 50-yard Cameron Dicker field goal puts the Chargers up ahead after Bo Nix has another multiple interception game.
All right, Laraib. Well, that's going to do it for our Week 15 preview. Thank you guys, or review, excuse me. Thank you guys for making it this far. If you have, always remember, just support us. Just honestly, just comment this time. Just tell us what you liked about the episode. If you made it this far, give us a thumbs up. But Laraib, you got anything else before we head out of here today?
No, I think that's the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.